Hi, my name's Sarah, and today I want to discuss neurodiversity and sex. Neurodivergence refers to a variation in thought processing, sensory intake, learning styles, and social abilities, and encompasses a wide variety of conditions such as OCD, ADHD, autism, dyslexia, Tourette's. In fact, you probably know someone who falls under the neurodivergent umbrella. Some studies show that 1 in 7 people are considered neurodivergent as opposed to neurotypical, while others estimate it's up to 30 to 40% of the population. One of the main signs of neurodivergence is a sensitivity to sensory input. Sex is a sensory minefield, so I wanted to discuss some of the ways that we can accommodate for sensory needs and differences in sensory intake. The senses affected by neurodivergence and impacted during sex go beyond the typical 5 of taste, touch, sight, smell, and sound to include interoception, which is the understanding of feelings within your body, and proprioception, which is the understanding of where your body exists in space, which affects your balance and your body positioning. Those on the autism spectrum, depending on the sensory input, tend to be either sensory seeking or sensory avoidant. The tendency to be one or the other can vary based on the individual, the type of sensory input, even just day to day. So it's very important to understand these sensory needs and know how to communicate them to your partner and with your partner to have a healthy sexual relationship. I want this video to work as a jumping point, both for those who experience those sensory sensitivities and any potential neurotypical partners, to really consider your own sensory needs and any potential sensory needs of sexual partners. Because everyone has sensory needs and sensory preferences, even if they're not as strong as some others. I think understanding sensory needs and accommodations is ultimately a tool to begin thinking about the ways that your senses impact every part of your life, but especially physical intimacy and pleasure, as pleasure is ultimately a sensory experience. I have a personal history with sensory issues, being one of those 1 in 7 who falls under the category of neurodivergence. I was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder at 21. And I have been in relationships, both platonic and romantic, with people on the autism spectrum. I also have a strong interest in the ways that sensory input affects our stress levels and our everyday lives, living in a world where sensory input is almost constant. Most people are trained from childhood to just push through when their senses are overwhelmed, which can lead to burnout in anyone. But for those who fall under that neurodivergent umbrella, especially those with autism, pushing through and reaching burnout can be much, much more dangerous. In order to have a healthy relationship between the mind, the body, and the emotional aspects, it's important to understand your own sensory needs and the potential sensory needs of anyone you care about. It's also important to understand that there are ways you can accommodate those needs, both in regular day-to-day life and also in sexual situations, so that you can avoid pushing yourself, overwhelming yourself, and reaching that point of burnout. Sex is meant to be about experiencing pleasure. And if your senses are being bombarded or completely understimulated, you're not going to be able to experience that pleasure. I touched a little on sensory seeking versus sensory avoidance in the beginning of this video, and I want to go a little more into detail about that. Those who are sensory seeking may be hyposensitive to sensory input, meaning they may seek out certain sensations in order to both stimulate themselves and soothe themselves. Those who are sensory seeking or hyposensitive may have a high pain tolerance. They may seek out loud noises or make loud noises when they can't find them. They may be unaware of internal body cues like hunger cues or bladder cues, and they may prefer firm touch over gentle touch. Those who are sensory avoidant are the opposite. They're hypersensitive to sensory input and may seek to avoid the senses that a sensory seeking person will look for. Those who are sensory avoidant may be more easily overwhelmed by loud noises or have issues with the texture of clothes. They may have trouble understanding where their body is in the context of their environment. And as I mentioned before, these can be independent reactions depending on the type of stimuli. Someone can be sensory seeking in some ways, preferring loud music, and sensory avoidant in other ways, refusing to wear velvet or wool. Sex involves a ton of sensory input, which can be overwhelming for neurotypical people as well. As we've learned in this course, anxiety is a key component of sexual dysfunction, and being overwhelmed or understimulated is a one-way ticket to anxiety. Someone who doesn't understand their sensory needs, who may feel overwhelmed, understimulated, anxious during sexual activity, may assume that they are broken, that there is something wrong with them, when in reality, it may just be as simple as flipping off the lights or changing the sheets in order to experience the pleasure they've been missing. Some of the ways that sensory accommodations can be made in a sexual context are through sensory tacks, simple ways to adjust the environment and the activity in order to stimulate those who are understimulated and prevent being overwhelmed by those who are sensory avoidant. For example, those who are sensory seeking may enjoy rougher forms of physical contact and may want to look into something like impact play with paddles, floggers, whereas those who are sensory avoidant may want to avoid sexual positions that involve a lot of skin-to-skin contact. The sense of touch can also be accommodated for by considering the textures surrounding you during sex, the material of the sheets, the clothing being worn, the texture of any lubricants being used. Neurodivergent people tend to be on opposite ends of the temperature spectrum. So turning on fans, adjusting the thermostat, keeping a cool rag nearby in case you get overheated can be helpful as well. Bright overhead lights can be overstimulating, so flip that switch off and turn on a bedside table or light some candles. But be careful with that because there's nothing more anxiety inducing than setting your bedroom on fire. Eye contact is often very difficult for people on the autism spectrum. So avoiding sexual positions like missionary that involve a lot of eye-to-eye contact, incorporating blindfolds into sexual play, or just closing your eyes and not taking it personally. Sensory needs related to the sense of sound can be very easy to accommodate for. Turn the radio up. Communicate that you need your partner to be more vocal. Or on the opposite side of the spectrum, make sure you're in a quiet place. Or invest in earbuds that can block out some or all of the noise around you. Smell is often one of our strongest senses, and a sensitivity to smell can create aversions to sex. Accommodations for the sensory need can be incorporated into foreplay. Showering together, using the same soaps to neutralize individual scents. You can consider those candles you lit earlier. Are they scented? Are they unscented? Is the lube you're using strawberry scented or fragrance free? All of the senses are tied together intrinsically, but the way that we process them, the way that we seek out or avoid certain senses can be much more complicated and is very individualistic. The most important thing to take away from this is that the needs of the individual are individual themselves. These are going to vary from partner to partner and possibly from interaction to interaction. But being able to understand your own sensory needs and communicate those to a partner, as well as understand when a partner is communicating them to you, is the key to being able to explore connection and physical intimacy without the sorts of anxiety and fear that can build up around sex and relationships. I believe regardless of your neurotype, neurodivergent or neurotypical, everyone has sensory needs, or at the very least sensory preferences. Being able to reflect on your own needs and preferences is only going to lead to a more fundamental understanding of your own needs, your own wants, your own desires. And understanding your own wants, needs, and desires is only going to lead to a healthier relationship with yourself, with your body, with your understanding of yourself as a sexual being. And then from there, your relationship with any potential sexual partners. And for those of us who do have higher sensory needs, understanding those, being able to accommodate for them, being able to communicate them to a partner is empowering and self-affirming. Whether the actual number of people who fall under the umbrella of neurodivergence is closer to 1 in 7 or closer to 40% of the population, that's still a lot of people. And a lot of those people are having sex. Understanding your needs when it comes to sex only leads to safer and more pleasurable sex. Well, this was just a very quick look into the ways that senses impact neurodivergent people and their sexual experiences. There's a lot more information out there on ways to understand your sensory needs and also to accommodate for those sensory needs. I'm going to include a ton of resources below, including a TikTok channel for those of us who like our information to be quick and easily digestible. Thank you for watching.